Good afternoon and welcome to Glenorchy's Planning Authority meeting for the 14th of April 2025. I'd like to acknowledge the Murinina people as the traditional owners of this land. We recognise all Tasmanian Aboriginal people as the original owners and continuing custodians of the land and waters of this island, the Trawita. We pay our respect to Aboriginal elders, past and present, and we commit to working for a city that welcomes and respects all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. My name is Sue Hickey and I'm the Mayor of Glenorchy and Chair of this afternoon's Planning Authority. Joining me this afternoon are my fellow authority members, and first of all I have the Deputy Mayor, Alderman Yaxley. We have Alderman King, Alderman Cockshut and Alderman Marks, and we have a number of staff in attendance as well. Item 1 is the Planning Authority Declaration. The Glenorchy Planning Authority intends to act as a planning authority under the Land Use Planning and Approvals Act of 1993. The Planning Authority has full power to make planning decisions on behalf of the Council. We do have meeting procedures. The Planning Officer presents assessment and recommendation and then answers any questions of the elected members. Please note, at this stage, a decision has not been made on the application. And it's my role to invite the applicant and any interested parties to have their say by addressing this meeting, and speakers will be limited to 5 minutes. And then the chairperson may ask the Planning Officer to comment on any matters raised. Right, so in attendance tonight we have Eddie Steenbergen, we have David Inches, Emma Riley, ERA, and Paul Campton and David Kernke. Thank you. So the speakers tonight will be Emma Riley, who's put down as the applicant. Is that correct? Thank you. Would you like to come to the table for us, please? And Mr. Inches, do you want to join her?
I'm ready for that.
Sorry? Oh, yes. Would you like to start?
I think we'll just go through.
Go through the order of.
Yeah.
Yes.
Might have jumped the gun.
I have jumped the gun.
Yeah.
I do it every time.
I've got a good seat here.
Yes, you are. Good.
So excited to see
Good. I've got a
that.
very enthusiastic audience. 4
minutes.
So the Planning Authority discusses the application. So first of all, would you like, no, statutory planning applications. The Planning Authority decides the application and the Senior Statutory Planner explains appeal rights. For planning scheme amendments, the Strategic Planner explains the decisions being made by the Planning Authority and the Planning Commission. Legal requirements. When deciding an application, the authority is required by law to seek to further the sustainable development objectives of the Act, consider representations received during the public notification period, and make the decision by reference to the current planning scheme provisions. And now I'm going to move on to, do we have any apologies or leave of absence? No, everyone's in attendance, that's great. Any pecuniary interests? No, that's good too. And the confirmation of minutes. Do I have anyone to move those? Thank you, Alderman Marks. Seconder, thank you, Alderman Cockshut. Do you want to make any discussion on the Alderman?
Just that the minutes are true and correct.
Thank you. Any further discussion? No. In that case, I'll put to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. Now, it's my role to ask you all to comply with the directions given by the chairperson and to respect other people's views and their right to have a say. I will now call for questions from the authority members. No, so first of all, I'd like to invite the relevant planning officer to represent the proposal who finishes with the recommendation, and after that we'll take questions from the authority members.
Thank
you,
Chair.
Darshani.
So today we're here to discuss the planning scheme amendment to allow a tourist operation under PLAM 2401. This is a report on representations received. So just a bit of a recap that we discussed in the meeting of the Planning Authority meeting in Jan 2025. The proposal relates to 100 Cadbury Road at Claremont for the Cadbury Chocolate Factory site. The anticipated future use and development is to have a Cadbury visitor experience on the site. The planning scheme amendment is to facilitate this future use and development of the visitor experience. So this is a tourist operation use that is otherwise not allowed on the site. So therefore, there is a planning scheme amendment. So the image on the slide is an image provided by the applicant indicating where the potential use and development may occur in the future. At this stage, it is only to amend the planning scheme to allow this. So the image, the other image on the site is one that is publicly available, not explicitly provided by the applicant. So the future use and development is described to have a tourist operation with a number of sort of elements to it, with quite a significant amount of visitors coming annually. And it is anticipated that they will be arriving by ferry. Again, all of this is subject to future planning applications. So originally, the applicant had proposed for a site-specific qualification to allow this use on the site. And as you may recall from the Jan 2025 meeting, council officers recommended a Cadbury visitor experience specific area plan instead, because we thought it would be a more coherent planning control that will ensure that the surrounding residential amenity will be maintained and also minimize any significant risk to impacts on the heritage values, which are significant for this site. So the site is a local heritage listed property. So representations received, in a nutshell, there were 22 representations received. This includes one Taswater's notice of no objection and 2 late representations. 16 of these representations expressed full support. This included 4 representations from the community members and a significant number from organizations. Some of these representations explicitly supported the modified planning control proposed by the council officers. A large number of the supporting representations had commonalities in what they expressed support in. So 2 community members supported the overall intent of the amendment, but raised specific matters for consideration. These representatives specifically supported the SAP approach and that was recommended by council officers. One representation was from the applicant, and it supported certain aspects of the modified amendment that we recommended, but opposed to some other matters. 2 community members completely opposed the amendment and raised a range of concerns, which will be discussed briefly now. So all of this is obviously in the documentation that you would have gone through, where we've given quite a lot of detail, but I'll just sort of go through these at a high level now. So ground 1, SAP approach and use qualification. I need to explicitly make it clear that the SAP approach was supported by the applicant, that while the applicant did consider it was complex and unnecessary in their opinion, they did support it, and they didn't want to sort of have a substantial modification process by opposing to it. So I think it is important for the elected members to note that. And the use qualification issue was also raised, which is that originally the applicant had proposed for 2 other additional uses, being the community meeting and entertainment use and the general retail and hire use, with a qualification to say were associated with the visitor experience at the site. However, upon further review, we considered that is creating sort of a new pathway that the planning scheme doesn't really already have. It is either a subservient use or it is a use by itself, and this is sort of creating a new sort of approach that is not required in our opinion. Ground 2 was an inclusion of a development standard. There was also a concern that the proposal was purely to allow a new use. However, obviously our council officers recommended a development standard, and this was unnecessary. Again, as council officers reviewed this, we considered that a development standard is quite important for this site, especially because the heritage values of the site clearly mention the significance of the gardens, and any development, irrespective of whether that was industrial development or for the tourist operation, would be proved difficult to be approved on those gardens. the open parkland settings, etc., which we'll get to in a moment when David talks about the heritage aspects. So therefore, while the intention was to allow this new use, it is very critical for us to also consider the development that would be an outcome of the use being allowed on that site. Ground 3, strategic planning and natural justice, there was also a concern that council officers were being reactionary, and we didn't really consider or reactionary to the peninsula by introducing this sort of new values for landscape values and views and things like that, and that we should have considered that in a more broader strategic approach, and that we didn't really consider it as part of our Tasmanian planning scheme when we transitioned from our interim schemes to introduce these values that may have been better addressed under other aspects of the planning scheme. So I guess the response for that is council, for us to do a broader sort of strategic planning exercise, it does take a lot of resources, funding, availability of time, etc. And we do look at applications and requests as they come in case by case. This has been our approach consistently throughout all our peninsulas. In an ideal world, it would be useful for us to do an analysis of our coastline and all of that. But this has sort of been the approach that we have taken for other peninsulas as well, including Mona, Wilkinson's Point, etc., due to these sort of limitations that we have. If we were to do a broader strategic planning exercise, as we know that this is what the future sort of intention is for this peninsula, it would create quite a lot of delays for us to put this on hold and go off and do sort of that strategic planning exercise. And during the Tasmanian planning scheme transition, we didn't really think it was appropriate for us to put in any sort of scenic protection overlays or anything for that site, because the Scenic Protection Code, in our opinion, deals with more sort of that vegetation and protection of skylines, etc., rather than protection of a site due to its heritage significance. Ground 4 is heritage, so this is quite a one of the big sort of area for this, where quite a lot of technical issues were raised, and I will let David speak to this ground. Thank you.
Yes, so the number of representations touched on heritage. The applicant put in a detailed representation, which no doubt you've read, in regards to heritage, and we have in turn responded with a comprehensive response out of respect for the issues raised. I note the applicant's advice was supported by an independent heritage consultant. In response, I just want to make it clear to the elected members that the council position was not solely formulated by myself alone as the heritage officer. Obviously, I took the lead in this, but it was tempered by peer review in both our statutory planning and our strategic planning units. So the position that we've arrived at in terms of our response to the representation and what's in front of you now is the best advice of Council's Planning and Services section. So we've responded to each of the elements raised, as you've seen in our responses, and that's been publicly advertised. You've seen a detailed individual representations, and we've made some slight changes. For example, in the track change version in attachment 3, we'll see that in regards to view fields, we've chosen to describe those rather than focus on point sites. We foresee some potential issues with those. We've also stepped back from necessarily requiring a visual impact assessment. That's not to say that one can't be submitted, but we've stepped back from that requirement, which I know the applicant had considered onerous. It doesn't mean that we'll still require response to that particular performance criteria, but we've stepped that back. We've also, and the thing to note, I guess, as well with this is there will be opportunities through the panel hearing process, if subject to the authority's decision today, and their expert delegates to further review the rationale for including or not including the controls.
Ground 5 is residential amenity. Again, it is important to note that the applicant did support the residential use standards relating to the surrounding amenity for the residential lots in the residential zones. Ground 6 was parklands and environmental impacts. So some of the representatives advised how the parklands are open for quite a community value, and they're open for recreational activities, etc. And they were concerned that having this use in development might have environmental impacts and impacts for the usage by the community as well. Again, to this, our response is there are parts of the land that are subject to environmental management zone codes, etc. within the planning scheme. Other than outside of the heritage sort of value for the parklands, anything that continues to apply under the planning scheme will continue to apply in terms of protecting wildlife, flora, fauna. And there is also no sort of grounds for us to require the applicant or the landowner to keep these parklands available to the public, while it is a community significant area, which I don't think the applicant has said that they're going to change that, but either way, it is under private ownership and we can't mandate them to keep them for the community. Ground 7 is tourism and economy. So we've got a lot of supporting representations from various organizations for the significant tourism benefits that the proposal would have, and also quite a lot of economy that it will bring to the state and the region as well. However, there was a couple of representatives who were concerned about, who raised some economic concerns relating to the impact on other sort of uses, retail uses in Claremont. And also one representative questioned, is this a better use of money when, there's healthcare issues and etc. Again, from planning, it is not possible for us to sort of regulate where money goes and how it is being utilized for. In terms of the impact to other facilities or other retail shops in Claremont, we don't think it would have an impact because this proposal is purely for the Cadbury visitor experience. So a regular IGA or a supermarket is not going to be allowed on these sites. It is going to be more niche in what it would be allowed under it. Ground 8, there was issues raised about traffic and parking and how the roads are narrow, etc. Again, so the planning scheme does have code C 2.0 that relates to traffic and parking, and code C 3.0 which relates to roads and assets, etc. So as part of any future planning application process, depending on the number of anticipated vehicles that will be entering, exiting, etc., there will be mechanisms available through the planning scheme to regulate any sort of impact and mitigate those impacts. It is also important to note that at the moment, the proposal does describe that a lot of the people who would be visiting the site will come via ferry and leave by the ferry service. So that will help diminish some of these sort of impacts as well. And either ways, even if the ferry option doesn't happen or doesn't go through the way it is anticipated to go through, there are enough controls within the planning scheme to sort of enable consideration of traffic and parking issues at a later stage. Ground 9 is about public consultation. So one of the representatives said that the applicant conducted informal consultation, and there were only 60 members who attended it, and it was not enough. However, that was not a statutory requirement, so they went above and beyond what was really required under LUPA for consultation. So that doesn't really count to the public consultation under the formal statutory process. Under the formal process, we have done everything that LUPA requires us to do, which is put up Mercury newspaper notices and advertise it for 28-day period. So I think the response to that is that there has been adequate public consultation. Ground 10 Some of the presenters identified some alternative locations that may be better suited for such a use and development. However, again, we can only take it case by case. The application has been, or the request for the amendment has been submitted for this site, so we can only really consider what has been received by council. There were other minor changes that council officers are recommending. These are just to clean up the SAP a little bit. So there are minor updates to the plan purpose. As David mentioned, we've made a few changes to the development standard relating to heritage. So we've updated the plan purpose to better reflect to the updated development standards. There was a little clerical error in the version that was advertised, that it didn't have a heading for the development standard, so we've introduced that back in. And there were also some updates to the objective of GLE S15.7.1, which is again relating to the development standard, so it better links to the proposed amendments to the controls that you can see on attachment 3. So the changes to the SAP are localized and they will not have an effect on the LPS as a whole. The amendment is still considered to meet the LPS criteria as required under Section 34 of LUPA with any of the changes that we propose. So they're all quite localized and minor. So the conclusion is what you can see on the screen is for the planning authority to agree to the recommended changes to the SAP, agree that the recommended changes shown in attachment 3 satisfy the LPS criteria, and provide the representations and the report to the Commission for further to progress this application forward. Questions?
Any questions?
No,
No. Okay, let's hear from the applicant.
Yep.
Hi, thank you, Mayor, Deputy Mayor and Alderman. I'm here with David Inches. David and Simon Current are kind of the lead proponents on this project. I'm not going to talk for particularly long at all. I just wanted to, I suppose, reinforce our appreciation for progressing the planning scheme amendment this far and acknowledge the response to our representation and particularly the proposed recommendation in relation to the adjusted wording for the development standard in relation to visual impact. While we, there are still probably two key matters that we have a point of disagreement with council officers over in relation to the table of use and the heritage aspects of the development standard. I suppose we are, content for the application to progress through to the Tasmanian Planning Commission, would intend to, I suppose, explore those points of differences more once a panel is appointed, and we have all representatives and council officers at the table. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Do we have any questions of the applicant? No, thank you very much. Now, our next speaker is Paul Campton. Hello, Mr. Campton.
Thank you, Mayor. Paul Campton, Claremont. Thank you for this time to speak. I'm supportive of the plan proposed by the council and the work undertaken by the council officers rather than the initial site qualification sought by the developers. In their 197 pages of documentation provided by the developer, they didn't show one single picture of the sealed gap path lined by the big trees, which is greatly enjoyed by the pedestrians, walkers, dog walkers and cyclists. Why didn't they show this jewel in the crown? We need clear protection of this walkways. It's not only got heritage values, but provides a place for fauna and flora, birds and people to enjoy. Page 8 of the agenda says, as the site is a heritage place under C67, already allows prohibited use to be considered as discretionary, subject to various heritage considerations. End of quote. A key consideration, therefore, is whether the proposed use would facilitate the restoration, conservation and future maintenance of the heritage significance of this place. This proposed development cannot show that it would facilitate the conservation of the heritage value of the big tree-lined walkway if it results in the actual destruction or replacement by small insignificant shrubs. Moreover, I note with concern the setting aside of clause C6.64 in the local heritage code, as this could potentially provide a mechanism for diminishing this tree-lined walkway. Council's already undertaken a review of the trees along Cadbury's Road, and only 2 trees were of concern, with the remainder having 15 to 40 years life left in them, which is more life than I've probably got left in me. So I also note that the large pine trees that have been cut down on Cadbury Road in past years have not been replaced. I look forward to the council ensuring that this special place is not lost for future generations. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you have any commentary on that?
Not really. I think the only thing I would probably say is clause 7.2 sort of option was explored. However, the applicant is not trying to restore, conserve or manage the heritage place, which is why we've obviously put in that development standard, which includes a conservation management plan focusing on the garden setting and tree-lined walkway, etc. So I think what we've recommended would hopefully enable the protection of those areas.
Right, so we look forward to it.
Thank you. Any questions of Mr. Clinton? No. Thank you, Mr. Campbell.
May I ask,
Yes.
through the Mayor, have all present actually walked along that walkway, the tree-lined walkway?
I walked most of it.
Yes, and the value of it?
Right there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now we've got Mr. Kirky. No, you're not speaking?
No, I won't. Basically, I know that the submission having trouble today speaking. Yes, I won't, but essentially my representation is along very similar lines to Paul about the importance of the trees and the protection for the future. And as a member of the public, I walk that daily. And I think the applicants will be looking for public money to do the development anyway, so that should be preserved for sure, part of the development. I'm supportive of the development, but trees are very important. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other contributions? No, thank you. And so now I'm going to ask our panel, do you have any questions at all? No? Can I have somebody move the recommendation? Thank you, Alderman Marks. Seconder, please. Thank you, Deputy. Would you like to talk to this motion?
Yes, I believe that the visitor experience will be great and beneficial to Glenorchy and Claremont, but what I can see from the area that they want to put it, the walkway is going to be still there and the trees are going to be still there, and I think it'll be a really good key point to keep. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other contributions? Thank you, Deputy.
Thank you, Mayor. So yes, I certainly considered the representations that have come through with the report, and thank everyone for their thoughts with that. I've never had or seen an application with so many positive representations, which was a really good thing to see. That even though they might be potentially, you sometimes always hear the most negative voices. So it was positive to hear some positive representations on this occasion. So so for me, it really does support the overall improvement of our economy. It meets demands for the hospitality and the range of other things that we talked about. I see that the SAP has been the best method and has been agreed upon by the applicants. And hopefully that the conservation management plan hopes to, certainly keep and achieve both the heritage of that site and also the future developments they can work in harmony. So I see no reason to not take the next step.
Thank you. Alderman Cockshott.
Thank you, Mayor. I echo the sentiments of my fellow elected members. I think it's a really exciting project, and it's great to see all parties coming together and working closely with council to come to this arrangement. Obviously, it's got to go through the next part if we do vote on it to go through today, but just want to say thanks to the council officers for the very detailed report, particularly picking up this project. I think, like the Deputy Mayor just said, lots of positive reviews for this project, which we haven't seen a lot before. So I think it'll be a great thing for the local economy and it really attract people into Glenorchy as well. So I look forward to seeing how it comes to life and teaming up with fellow attractions in the area like Mona, the use of the ferries and the waterways as well. So that's super exciting.
Thank you. Alderman King.
Thank you, Mayor. Definitely, my fellow aldermen Deputy Mayor have really covered the potential of all this and where we're at and where we could be. But as someone who used to visit the old visitor centre, often too regularly, I suppose, but nevertheless, it brought a lot of people to Claremont, a lot of people to Glenorchy. It was a major attraction. It was the major attraction. And for somebody like me, very easily attracted there, as I say. But so I look forward to this new experience and hope it can bring back some of the zest and that used to be around Cadbury's before it started to shrink in employment. And we just need more reject chocolate so we can get cheap chocolate. That's what we need. For the good old days. I have heard that before.
5 kilogram boxes we used to buy. Can you imagine what fun that was?
That's why they call them the good old days.
The good old days.
Yes. Well, I share the recollections.
Yes.
Thank you. So do we have anyone else who wants to make another comment? No? Would you like to sum up, Alderman Marks? No? Thank you. In that case, I put the motion to the vote. All those in favour? It's carried unanimously. So wish the applicant good luck. And we now go back to our senior strategic planner, Darshini Bengaluru High. Thank you.
So the next steps of this process is that the report on the representations and the modifications to the draft SAP will be submitted to the Tasmanian Planning Commission. The Commission will appoint delegates for the panel hearing process, and then they will undertake their assessment, consider all the representations received, hold public hearings where required. The representatives will be invited to the panel hearings held by the Commission as well. The Commission then determines whether to approve the amendment with modifications, or reject the amendment.
Thank you. And with that information, we wish you the best of luck. And the meeting closes at 4:04. Thank you very much for your attendance.